Jessica Sanders had once been the very picture of success. A 32-year-old marketing executive, she was living the dream in the bustling city of Chicago. She had a sleek apartment in the Loop, a steady job at one of the city's top firms, and a social life filled with brunches and happy hours. Her colleagues admired her for her sharp intellect and her ability to climb the corporate ladder with ease. From the outside, Jessica had it all: money, prestige, and the perfect career. But life, as it often does, can change in the blink of an eye. It started small, a couple of missed bills, a few late nights at the office. Jessica didn't notice at first how her life was slowly unraveling. Then her marriage ended abruptly. She found herself alone, navigating the painful breakup of her high school sweetheart-turned-husband who had once promised to build a life with her. The emotional toll was more than she had anticipated, and it triggered a downward spiral she wasn't prepared for. As Jessica grappled with the pain of her crumbling marriage, the economy also began to falter. The firm she had worked at for years downsized, and despite her credentials and experience, she was laid off. The job market was tough, and despite sending out dozens of applications, no one seemed interested in hiring a marketing professional with gaps in her resume and a growing sense of desperation. With her savings drained, Jessica struggled to make ends meet. The expensive rent in her downtown apartment soon became impossible to pay. She tried everything she could to stay afloat, living off ramen noodles, selling some of her belongings, even taking on odd freelance work. But the weight of her situation became too much. She moved to a cheap rundown apartment on the outskirts of the city, but the bills piled up faster than she could handle them. Eventually, Jessica found herself on the streets. Without the money to keep up with the rent and nowhere else to turn, she was forced to leave behind her old life. It was humbling to say the least. She hadn't imagined her life would end up like this. The woman who once had a corner office now had only a worn-out cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps." On a cold gray morning, in early November, Jessica sat on a park bench near the corner of Clark Street. The wind whipped through the trees, and the world seemed to ignore her presence. People passed by without a second glance, avoiding eye contact as if her situation was contagious. But Jessica had learned to be invisible to survive on the outskirts of society. Her mind often wandered back to better times before the bills, before the loneliness, before the loss. She remembered the bustling city streets from her office window, the warmth of her old life, and the dreams she once had. But now all she had was the $5 in her pocket, the last of her savings, and a quiet desperation that echoed in the hollow spaces of her heart. Little did she know, her life was about to change in a way she couldn't have predicted. Ella Mitchell was a 23-year-old college student from the quiet suburbs of Chicago. Unlike many of her peers, she wasn't focused on the latest trends or chasing after the next big social media fad. Instead, Ella's heart was rooted in kindness, generosity, and a strong desire to make the world a better place. Growing up in a middle-class family, she had always been taught the values of hard work and empathy. Her parents, both teachers, instilled in her the belief that helping others was the truest form of success. Ella had recently transferred to the University of Chicago, where she was majoring in social work. Her dream was to one day work with at-risk youth, helping them overcome challenges and find their path in life. But for now, she was just a young woman trying to navigate the rigors of university life, managing the balance of studies, part-time work, and volunteer projects. Despite her hectic schedule, Ella always made time for those in need. Whether it was volunteering at shelters, tutoring underprivileged children, or just offering a listening ear to anyone who needed it, Ella was the person people turned to when they were looking for support. Her friends often described her as a beacon of light, always ready with a smile and a helping hand. Ella's family was proud of her dedication to making the world a better place, even though it sometimes meant sacrificing her own comfort and time. Her mother often reminded her that kindness doesn't cost a thing, a mantra that Ella lived by every single day. One chilly afternoon in late autumn, as Ella walked to the corner store near campus to grab a coffee, she passed through a park and noticed a woman sitting alone on a bench. The woman looked worn down, her clothes tattered and her face weathered by life's hardships. Ella slowed her pace instinctively, feeling a pang of sympathy. It wasn't unusual to see people struggling on the streets of Chicago, but something about this woman caught her eye. There was a quiet sadness in her gaze, and Ella could sense that she had experienced more pain than anyone should. Without thinking, Ella reached into her purse and pulled out the $5 bill she had left after buying a coffee earlier that morning. She didn't have much, but she knew she could spare it. As she approached the woman, she offered the bill with a gentle smile. "I hope this helps," Ella said softly, her voice kind and genuine. The woman, who hadn't expected to be seen, looked up in surprise. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and there was a silent understanding between them, a recognition of shared humanity. The woman accepted the money, and Ella turned to walk away, her heart feeling just a little lighter. Ella didn't think much about the encounter that day. She continued with her usual routine, heading to class and meeting friends afterward, not giving it a second thought. But the woman Jessica had a profound impact on her heart. She would later reflect on the moment as one of the small acts of kindness that made life worth living. What Ella didn't know was that her seemingly simple gesture of giving away her last $5 would set into motion a series of events that would change both of their lives forever. A small act of kindness from one stranger to another would eventually bring the two women together in a way neither of them could have ever imagined. The next morning, the air in Chicago felt crisp as autumn settled in, and the streets buzzed with the usual hustle and bustle of the city. Ella had just finished her early classes and decided to stop by the park once more on her way to grab lunch. The morning had been uneventful, filled with the usual mix of lectures and study sessions, but her mind kept drifting back to the encounter with the woman on the bench. It had stuck with her more than she realized. There was something about that fleeting moment, something deeply human that made her wonder about the woman's life. As Ella crossed the same park, she wasn't expecting to see her again, but there, sitting on the same bench, was the woman. She hadn't moved much. Her clothes were still worn, her face still tired from the harsh realities of life on the streets. But there was a certain stillness in her that morning, like she had come to accept something she hadn't fully embraced before. Ella hesitated for a moment, then, driven by an impulse she couldn't quite explain, she approached the bench. The woman looked up as if sensing her presence before she even spoke. Ella gave her a tentative smile. "Hi," Ella said softly, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "I don't know if you remember me, but I gave you a few dollars yesterday." Jessica blinked, taken aback by the recognition. "Oh yes, I remember you," she replied, her voice hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken much lately. Her eyes scanned Ella for a moment, as if trying to place her. Ella sat down beside her, keeping a respectful distance, yet offering a sense of calm. "I was just passing through and wanted to check if you were okay," Ella continued. "I mean, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know." She wasn't sure what she expected. Perhaps some kind of conversation, maybe even a thank you. But all she knew was that something inside her urged her to offer her presence, not just her money. For a long moment, Jessica remained silent. Ella felt the weight of the pause, unsure if she had said the right thing. Then finally Jessica spoke, her words coming slowly, like they were being carefully pulled from the depths of her heart. "You know, I've been out here for a while," Jessica began, her eyes gazing ahead, not quite looking at Ella. "I lost my job last year, then my apartment, and soon everything else just seemed to fall apart. I've been trying to get back on my feet, but it's tough. People, they don't usually stop, you know? They just walk by, like they're afraid of seeing someone like me. But you didn't look away." Ella's heart softened as she listened. The woman's story wasn't unlike so many others Ella had read about in her social work textbooks. An unexpected downfall, a life derailed by misfortune, but hearing it in real life from someone right in front of her was different. This wasn't just a case study. This was a person, a mother, a daughter, a woman who had dreams once, who had been knocked down by life's cruel twists. Ella felt a pang of empathy. She hadn't expected to feel this much for a stranger, but something about Jessica's vulnerability resonated with her deeply. Without thinking, Ella placed a hand on Jessica's arm, a simple gesture, but one that carried the weight of a shared connection. "I'm sorry that must be so hard," Ella said quietly, "but you're not alone, okay? I mean, if there's anything I can do to help, really anything, please don't hesitate to reach out." Jessica's face softened, and for the first time she smiled, a small, tired smile, but one that reached her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means more than you know." Ella nodded, then stood to leave, but before she could turn away, Jessica's voice stopped her. "Wait," Jessica said, her tone more urgent now. "I know it sounds crazy, but would you mind if I gave you something?" Ella turned back, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Jessica hesitated for a moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled business card. It was old and weathered, but the name on it was still legible. Jessica Carter, founder of Carter's Hope. Ella raised an eyebrow. You're the founder of Carter's Hope? Ella asked, a bit incredulous. Jessica nodded. I started a small organization years ago. It was supposed to help women in need, but it fell apart. I never really told anyone. I thought maybe I could get it going again one day. Ella stared at the card, unsure of what to say. There was so much more to Jessica than she had initially realized. The woman on the bench wasn't just a homeless person asking for spare change. She was someone who had once held hope and ambition, just like Ella. But life had taken a turn she wasn't prepared for, and yet she still had dreams of rebuilding, of making a difference. I think you can, Ella said softly, her voice full of conviction. I really do. Jessica looked at Ella, a faint glimmer of hope in her eyes. Thank you, she said again, her voice filled with emotion. As Ella left the park that day, her mind was spinning. What started as a brief, simple exchange had turned into something far more profound. She knew in that moment that her encounter with Jessica was far from over. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. Days turned into weeks, but for Jessica nothing seemed to change. Each morning she woke up with the same overwhelming sense of hopelessness that had settled over her since the day she lost her job. The world around her was constantly moving, but she felt stuck, tethered to a life she no longer recognized. Despite the brief, uplifting conversation with Ella, reality had a way of crashing down hard. Jessica continued to spend her days on the park bench, a spot she had claimed as her own since she had nowhere else to go. The routine had become familiar. Wake up early, find some breakfast, usually a granola bar or whatever she could scrounge together, and wait. Wait for something, anything to change. She wasn't sure what she expected. Maybe a job offer, maybe someone willing to take a chance on her, but the chances seemed few and far between. The nights were the hardest. As the sun set, the chill of the evening air began to creep in. Jessica would pull her jacket tighter around her body and curl up as best she could. The loneliness felt sharper at night. The sound of distant traffic and muffled voices, a reminder that she was on the edge of the world. Every night she wondered if there was a way back from this place, if she could find a way to rebuild. But each time she thought about it, the weight of her situation became overwhelming. The small moments of kindness, like Ella's visit, felt like distant memories. In the cold light of her struggles, they seemed too fleeting to matter. And yet, Jessica found herself holding on to the thought of Ella's words. You're not alone. The reminder gave her just enough strength to get through another day. Still, the pressure of survival bore down on her relentlessly. Without a steady income, Jessica had to be resourceful. She spent hours each day walking through the streets of Chicago, trying to find something, anything that could help. Sometimes it was a free meal from a local shelter. Other times it was a few coins from a passing pedestrian. But no matter how hard she tried, the cycle felt endless. Her pride often kept her from asking for help. But the truth was, she needed it. She needed someone to see her as more than just another face on the street. One afternoon, while Jessica was sitting in the park, a woman approached her. Her name was Linda, and she was one of the few people who stopped by regularly to check on the homeless. Linda had known Jessica by sight for weeks, and had often brought her food. Today, however, she brought something different, a flyer with a local job listing. There's a diner down on State Street, Linda explained. They're looking for a dishwasher. It's not glamorous, but it's a start. I thought you might want to check it out. Jessica took the flyer with a mix of hope and hesitation. She hadn't had a steady job in over a year, and the idea of starting from scratch was both intimidating and humbling. But something inside her stirred. Maybe it was the memory of her old dreams, the ones she hadn't let go of completely. Thanks. Jessica said, her voice quiet but full of gratitude. She knew this opportunity wasn't going to solve everything, but it was a door, and right now, any door felt like a lifeline. Later that week, Jessica gathered the last of her courage and went to the diner. She had nothing to lose. She walked in still feeling the weight of her circumstances, but determined to try. The interview was brief. The manager didn't ask many questions about her past. He seemed more interested in whether she could show up every day ready to work. When he offered her the job, Jessica almost didn't believe it. For a brief moment, the noise of the city faded away, and all she could hear was the steady beat of her own heartbeat. It was the first piece of good news she had received in months. But even as she accepted, the familiar doubts crept in. Could she really handle it? Could she keep up with the job, the hours, the exhaustion? Or was this just another false hope? Despite her doubts, Jessica took the job. It wasn't a cure-all, but it was a start, a chance to dig herself out of the hole she had fallen into. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but as she left the diner that afternoon, she felt something shift inside her. The struggle wasn't over, but at least now she was moving forward one small step at a time. Weeks passed since their first encounter, but Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that she had been marked by Ella's kindness. It was a fleeting moment, a single act of generosity, but it had stayed with her like a whisper of hope. On the wind, Jessica hadn't expected to see the young girl again. After all, people like Ella had their own lives, their own priorities. They didn't come back for someone like Jessica. But Ella had proven her wrong. It was a warm afternoon when Jessica first noticed her. She was sitting on the same bench trying to ignore the hunger gnawing at her stomach when a familiar voice called out to her, "Jessica." She looked up and there was Ella standing a few feet away with a beaming smile on her face. Her long brown hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she was holding a large white envelope in her hands. Ella, Jessica said, her voice a mixture of surprise and disbelief. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected anyone to come back for her, let alone a young girl who had every reason to forget about the homeless woman she'd met weeks ago. "I wanted to come back," Ella said, her voice filled with warmth. "I know you were going through a hard time, and I've been thinking about you." She hesitated for a moment as if unsure how to continue, then stepped closer, offering Jessica the envelope. "I hope this helps." Jessica took the envelope with shaking hands, unsure of what to expect. Was it money? A charity donation? She wasn't sure, but something about the way Ella held herself told Jessica that this wasn't just another gesture of pity. This was different. "I didn't know what to do." Ella continued, her voice faltering slightly. "But after everything you said, after hearing your story, I wanted to do something that mattered, something that could change things for you." Jessica's heart began to race. Her thoughts spun in a dozen different directions. Could it be? Could this young girl with so much of her own life ahead of her truly be offering a chance to change her own? Opening the envelope slowly, Jessica's eyes widened as she pulled out a check, a large one. The number on the check wasn't just any amount. It was a six-figure sum. Jessica stared at it in disbelief. Her mind raced to comprehend what she was holding. "Ella, this is too much," Jessica stammered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I can't accept this. I don't even know what to say." But Ella just shook her head, her eyes steady and unwavering. "You can accept it. It's not too much. You've been through so much and you deserve a chance. This is just the beginning. I know you've been struggling and I wanted to help, however I could. I've been working with my family's foundation and they agreed to sponsor you, help you get back on your feet." Jessica was speechless. The gravity of what Ella had just done hit her all at once. It wasn't just the money. It was the trust, the belief that someone out there cared enough to make such a profound difference in her life. This wasn't a handout. It was an opportunity, and Jessica knew deep down that this moment could be the turning point she had been waiting for. "Ella, I don't know how to thank you," Jessica said, her voice full of emotion. She felt the tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she held them back. It was overwhelming knowing that someone had gone out of their way to help her, a woman who had been invisible to so many. This is life-changing. You don't know how much this means to me." Ella smiled softly, her eyes glinting with pride. "I believe in you. Jessica, you've already made it this far. You just need a little push, and I know you'll be able to do whatever you set your mind to. This is your chance. Don't let it slip away." Jessica nodded, though she wasn't sure she could believe what was happening. It felt like a dream, like she might wake up any minute to find out it was all a fantasy. But the envelope was real, the check was real, and Ella was standing right in front of her, offering her a second chance at a life she had almost given up on. As Ella began to walk away, she turned back, her smile lingering in Jessica's memory. "I'll be checking in on you," she said, "but I believe in you. You've got this," for the first time in what felt like forever. Jessica felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time: hope. It was a fragile thing, but it was there. And it was enough to fuel her determination. She wasn't sure exactly how she would use the money or what the future held, but she knew this. She wouldn't let this opportunity go to waste, not after everything Ella had done for her. The days following Ella's unexpected return felt like a blur. Jessica couldn't stop thinking about the check she had received, the enormous sum that had the potential to change her entire life. She had spent hours staring at it, trying to absorb the magnitude of what was happening. But no matter how hard she tried to grasp the reality of it, something about the situation still didn't seem real. She had spent most of her life in a constant state of survival mode, never expecting anything good to come her way. The homeless shelter she stayed at felt more like a temporary pit stop than a home, and her days were filled with the endless cycle of trying to make it through the next meal, the next night. But now, with Ella's help, it felt like the door to a new life was finally opening, one that wasn't just about scraping by, but about thriving. Jessica had made a decision. The first thing she would do with the money was find stable housing. She hadn't had a permanent place to call home in years, and the idea of having a roof over her head, a place to feel safe and secure, was a dream she had nearly given up. On the next step was to start working again. She had always been a hard worker, but opportunities had been scarce. Now she had the means to search for something more sustainable, a job that could help her build a future. But even as Jessica moved forward with her plans, there was a lingering question in her mind. Why had Ella done this for her? Why had a young girl who could have easily forgotten about the homeless woman she met once gone so far to help a stranger? Jessica had thought about it every night, but no matter how much she tried to understand, she couldn't come up with a reasonable answer. The kindness was so out of the blue, so unprompted that it almost seemed too good to be true. As the days passed, Jessica kept an eye out for Ella. She wondered if the girl would check in like she said she would, or if the gesture had simply been a moment of compassion that had come and gone. But then, one late afternoon, as Jessica was leaving the shelter to meet with a housing consultant, she was stopped by a familiar voice calling her name, Jessica. She turned to find Ella standing at the entrance, her bright smile the same as it had been before. But this time, there was something different about her, a sense of urgency in her eyes, like she was carrying some weight that was too heavy for one person to bear. "Ella, what's going on?" Jessica asked, a sense of concern creeping into her voice. Ella took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for something big. "I didn't just come to check on you," she said, stepping closer. "There's something else I need to tell you." Jessica's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what Ella was talking about, but something about her tone made Jessica feel like she was standing on the edge of something monumental. I've been talking to my family," Ella continued, "and we've been looking into ways we can do more. You see, my parents run a foundation, and when I told them your story, they wanted to help in a bigger way." Jessica blinked, trying to absorb the words. "What do you mean, bigger way?" Ella smiled softly, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled out a large envelope. "We want to make sure you're not just surviving anymore," she said, handing Jessica the envelope. "We want you to have a real chance. We've set up a scholarship for you, and the foundation is going to cover all of your living expenses for the next year." Jessica stared at the envelope, her mind racing. "A scholarship. But I've never gone to school." "I don't," Ella interrupted her gently. "It's not just for school, it's for you, Jessica, for your future. You've been through so much, and we believe you deserve a shot at a fresh start. This is a chance for you to not just survive, but thrive. We want you to have the resources to get back on your feet. You'll have a roof over your head, a stipend for food, and help with anything you need to start a new career." Jessica's breath caught in her throat. The generosity, the thoughtfulness, it was beyond anything she could have ever imagined. She felt the familiar sting of tears gathering in her eyes, but this time they weren't born from sorrow. They were from something else, something deeper, gratitude. You don't have to do this," Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't deserve all this. You've already done so much for me." Ella shook her head, her expression serious. "You do deserve it. You're a fighter, Jessica. You've shown so much strength even when things were impossible. You've got a story that needs to be told, and I know you're going to do incredible things with this opportunity." Jessica felt a wave of emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope, belief. The possibility that maybe she could have the life she had always dreamed of. For so long she had been trapped in a cycle of survival, never imagining there could be a way out. But here it was, staring her in the face, an opportunity so big it was almost hard to believe. Ella smiled softly, her eyes shining with sincerity. "This isn't just about money, Jessica. It's about giving you the power to choose your future, and I know you'll make the most of it." As Jessica stood there holding the envelope that represented not just financial assistance, but an entire world of possibilities, she realized something profound. It wasn't just the money that mattered. It was the belief, the faith that someone had placed in her. Ella and her family didn't just see Jessica as a homeless woman in need. They saw her as someone capable of greatness, someone worthy of a future that wasn't defined by her past, and that, more than anything, was the true gift, with tears in her eyes. Jessica looked up at Ella, her heart full. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." Ella simply smiled. "I think I do." Jessica's life was forever changed by the unexpected kindness of a young girl. But what Ella had given her was far more than just money. It was an opportunity, a second chance, and a powerful reminder that one small act of kindness could ripple outward, touching the lives of more people than anyone could imagine. As Jessica settled into her new life, things started to fall into place in ways she never thought possible. The scholarship that Ella's family had set up for her provided her with everything she needed to get back on her feet: stable housing, food, and the resources to pursue her dreams. The moment Jessica moved into her new apartment, it felt like a fresh start. The walls that once held only the weight of struggle now held hope, determination, and a vision for the future. But Jessica was not one to sit idly by, waiting for things to fall into her lap. Inspired by the kindness that had been shown to her, she knew she had to pay it forward. She began volunteering at the homeless shelter she had once called home, helping others who were in the same position she had been. She shared her story, not just as a testament to her own strength, but as proof that things could change even when it felt like there was no way out. As Jessica spent more time at the shelter, she met people who had been living on the streets for years, some even longer than she had. She saw the familiar despair in their eyes, the same despair that had once consumed her. But now Jessica saw something different in herself. She saw a woman who had not only survived, but had been given a second chance, and she was determined to help others see that same possibility. Jessica began organizing workshops for people at the shelter, teaching them how to build their resumes, apply for jobs, and prepare for interviews. She even set up a small clothing drive to ensure that everyone at the shelter had access to clean professional clothes for interviews. Slowly but surely, the people around her started to change. They began to believe in themselves again, just as she had once done, and it didn't stop there. Word of Jessica's transformation spread quickly, and soon, local businesses started reaching out, offering to provide job opportunities for those in need. A coffee shop owner named Daniel offered to hire several people from the shelter, while a local restaurant chain offered internships for those interested in pursuing the culinary arts. Jessica was overwhelmed with gratitude as she helped coordinate these opportunities, seeing firsthand how small acts of kindness could create a wave of positive change. One of the people who benefited from Jessica's efforts was a man named Dave, who had been living on the streets for over a decade. He had always struggled with addiction and had long given up on the idea of ever turning his life around. But Jessica never gave up on him. She encouraged him to take part in the workshops, even when he doubted himself. With her guidance, Dave applied for a job at Daniel's coffee shop and was hired on the spot. "I never thought I'd be here," Jessica Dave said, with a grin standing behind the counter in his apron. "For the first time, I didn't think anyone would ever give me a chance. But you did." Jessica smiled, the satisfaction of helping someone else achieve what she had once thought impossible, filling her heart. "You earned this, Dave. You just needed someone to believe in you." But it wasn't just the people at the shelter who were affected by Jessica's ripple effect. As she became more active in the community, people who had once ignored her, who had once looked past her as just another homeless woman, began to notice her transformation. Neighbors who had never spoken to her before stopped to say hello, offering their support. Local organizations reached out, offering resources to help her expand her outreach. The media also caught wind of her story. One afternoon, Jessica was interviewed by a local news station where she shared her experience and the powerful impact that Ella's kindness had on her life. The interview went viral, spreading far beyond their small community. Soon, Jessica was invited to speak at conferences and charity events, sharing her story of resilience, hope, and the ripple effect that kindness can have. The most surprising part, though, was the attention that Ella received. After the interview, Jessica received a message from Ella's family. Ella's parents were so proud of what Jessica had accomplished that they had decided to launch a new initiative aimed at helping more people like her. They had seen how far Jessica's story had spread and wanted to invest in creating more opportunities for those who had faced similar struggles. The ripple effect of Jessica's transformation was far greater than she could have ever imagined. Not only had she changed her own life, but she had also touched the lives of countless others. People who had once given up on themselves now saw that there was hope. They saw that with a little help, they too could overcome their struggles and build a better future. As Jessica stood in front of a crowd at one of her workshops, seeing the faces of the people she had helped, she realized something profound. The kindness that had been extended to her was like a spark that had ignited something far greater. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating a legacy of giving, of hope, and of believing in the potential of others. None of this would be possible if Ella hadn't reached out to me. Jessica said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. But now I'm here to help you, and together we're going to make sure that the ripple effect continues. Jessica's journey was a powerful reminder of the incredible power of kindness and the far-reaching impact that one simple act can have. It wasn't just about the money, the scholarship, or the opportunities. It was about a young girl who saw a stranger in need and made a choice to help, not knowing how it would change everything. That one decision set off a series of events that would transform Jessica's life and ripple outward, touching countless others along the way. What started as a small act of generosity turned into a movement of hope and empowerment. Jessica didn't just receive a handout. She received a lifeline. And she did more than just hold on to it. She passed it forward, lifting others up who had once been where she was, through her hard work, determination, and willingness to help others. Jessica created a cycle of support and compassion that spread throughout her community. But the story doesn't end with Jessica's success. The true legacy of Ella's act of kindness lies in the way it inspired change, not only in Jessica's life, but in the lives of everyone she touched. It's a testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, someone's light can shine through, lighting the way for others to follow. In the end, Jessica's story isn't just about a homeless woman who found a way out. It's about the incredible power of human connection, empathy, and the willingness to make a difference. It's proof that no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Every good deed has the potential to create a ripple effect, and sometimes those ripples can change the world. As for Ella, the young girl who started it all, she will never fully understand the extent of the impact her generosity had, but perhaps that's the most beautiful part of it. Her kindness was given without expectation, and in return it became a gift that kept on giving, forever changing the lives of those who needed it most.